Hey everybody, this is Perch. I was gonna do a video on this, and then thought, time had passed and it wasn't worth it. And then I got more messages asking, like, "Hey, can you talk about this thing?" And so, what is it? It's the Powerpuff Girls CW pilot. And there's a bunch of things to unpack here. Whenever someone says that, by the way, there's a bunch of things to unpack. They're not that smart, and they're trying to make themselves sound smarter. That's what I think, anyway. Whenever someone's like, we got a lot of important concepts to digest as we unpack this complex situation. It's like, I am stalling for time. Anyway, I'll stop stalling for time now. Anyway, there's a few pieces to this. So the first, I mean, it's clearly garbage. I'm sure it will appeal to someone. I think there's a segment of the audience that loves this kind of ironic '90s kind of, it's 20 years later and let's kind of reference it and completely leverage the brand, but also mock it at the same time. That's very popular with creators today, and you see it in comics, you see it in shows, you see it a lot in comics. Actually, I'll come back to that. There's a lot of creators who think, hey, remember that thing that was cool in the '90s, or maybe that thing that was not cool in the '90s. So let's bring that back because let's do it like nostalgia, but let's take these things from the '90s and then let's make them like super like contemporary using modern things. And what's funny is the people who are doing this, their view of kind of modern terminology is actually like Twitter language circa 2018. So it's like they're not even modern. It's interesting. As people who often reference let's do some kind of ironic pop culture are not actually up on current pop culture, and so they make these references like in the Powerpuff Girls script that got leaked. They said, I mean, come on, moveon.org, man. And it's like that is a groan of a statement. It's on every front. It's a little bit when what was it, Hillary Clinton during the election is like, let's all Pokemon go to the polls, and it's like, no, no, that's not. Nobody's looking good with that reference. You do not look trendy. You you just it's terrible. For part of my life, a small part of it, I grew up in kind of rural area down in Colorado and kind of that area. And Colorado is now a very trendy state. Like they've got it's turned purple. Is what they say. So it depends on actually what party you're from. The Democrats say it's purple. The Republicans say it's blue. It depends on where you are in Colorado. It's a very mixed state. But once upon a time, like the fashions and the trends in Colorado, and then like worse if you go down to New Mexico, they like what's really super current was actually popular like 5 years ago in LA and New York. And everybody gets their turn, but it's always funny to me when creators put this stuff out. So uh, the 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 idea of let's take a property and let's just twist it and torque it and bring it back, and look, we'll do it in a modern art style, and we'll do a few things, we'll kind of mock it and all the rest. It's I think it was funny a few times, and now it's as much of a go-to kind of boring formula as if you grew up in the '80s. There was this formula of like there's like it would be set in like a ski school or a beach school, like it's a surfing school, and it was like they call them sex comedies, and there was very little sex in it. It just, you basically had a bunch of horny guys and they wanted to get with women, so we're going to make a pact that by the end of the summer or the winter or whatever it is, we're all going to get laid. And then there'd be like shenanigans would go on, and like some rich McDouchington guy would be there who's trying to like bulldoze down the kid community center to build a parking lot for rich people cars or something, and so they'd have to win the big ski race or the big surfing contest in order to defeat douchey McMoneyton or whatever his name was. And he all douchey McMoneyton always had like the son like Chip, and Chip was like a super dick who had like a really hot girlfriend, but she didn't really like him, and our hero liked it. You know this formula. Anyway, that's how it feels now when they're doing these kinds of things, and that's how Powerpuff Girls, this CW plot, came out. The script that was shown. By the way, it's been funny to watch some people defend this plot, like, hey, you didn't read the entire script. Who knows? Maybe you're just reading the bad part. And it's like, look, if there's a bad part of the script, then it's I like this idea. Like, I'm trying to picture the movie where like can you imagine the original Star Wars movie or Empire Strikes Back, and you're like, okay, what would be the 20% of that film that just sounds so super terrible that if you read that and nothing else, you're like, wow, this movie's gonna suck. That's not how movies work. It's not like, well, you just read the bad parts. It's like, if there's bad parts, you should work to get rid of the bad parts. Anyway, this movie or this show is a CW show, and you know you've got something really crappy on your hands when the CW is like, yeah, no, we'll pass. You're gonna have to go back to the drawing board on that one, and you feel bad because they showed photos from presumably the pilot where they actually filmed stuff, meaning there's footage out there of these characters saying stuff like they're going to leak Bubbles' nude pictures, and they're talking about things being triggering, and just like I think the premise was that the professor kind of was evil and sold off their likenesses when they were kids to make this lame cartoon, and they whitewashed one of the characters who was actually black, but then she was just kind of tannish in the cartoon, and so he's kind of a racist as well. And like you're reading over this, and it's just a boring, drudgy, unfun bunch of crap. And again, I'm sure there's some, very, very smug hipsters who are like, this is going to be the funnest thing ever. But at the same time, if CW, which as we all know is a paragon of amazing quality content, is like, yeah, no, then you've lost the plot. I mean, to some very, very massive level, you've lost it. And so it's going back to the drawing board. My bet is it just dies a death here. I'm guessing the going back to the drawing board and the absolutely incredible amount of negative attention that it got across the board. The funny thing was there were very few people. There's like a handful of people like trying to defend it, like, "Hey guys, don't be mean to the Hollywood writer." But by and large, everybody's like, "Yeah, this sounds terrible." Because no matter whether you are super woke or super the opposite of woke, there needs to be a good term. What is the red pilled? Maybe I don't know. No matter what ideology you're from, everybody can kind of unify around this idea of grown up Powerpuff Girls talking about leaking nude photos and doing jokes like MoveOn.org. She should just MoveOn.org, bro. That she didn't say bro, but she should have. And I think one of the Powerpuff Girls like hooked up with another girl, and then like they had some just crazy like marathon sex, and like the part of the script is like you could hear banging from the floor as like the walls shaking, and anyway, none of that sounds good. No matter who you are, you're looking at that going, I have no interest in seeing that just sounds awful, and that's what we got. So my guess is this thing dies. When people are asking, what do you think? Do you think they'll retool this thing, come back at it? No, I think it's such a bad name. At this point, it's the CW, and they're going uphill. I mean, unless CW does the ultimate kind of mind trick and they actually go further, like film it as not just using this script, but do it so much worse, so you get like an ultra campy piece of crap on their hands that they could just kind of just showcase as like just the worst show ever. You could go in that direction, which would be kind of entertaining, but no, my guess is it's dead. But it is part of this symptom, I think, of, like I mentioned at the beginning, of you take a property that was popular, or is there some nostalgia factor back in the 90s, and you decide to contemporize it. We've seen it for She-Ra, She-Ra was successful-ish. So it was successful in the sense that it got renewed, got seasons, made money. So that is a success. It was it wasn't as successful as it could have been because it did get embroiled in all this controversy. And I think there's this analogy of this idea that controversy can be king. And if you can get a bunch of people talking about it, then they'll watch it. Some people watch it, some people hate watch it, but you really don't care. You're getting your money either way. And, but I think more and more, especially with streaming, it doesn't quite work out that way. You can get people watching this stuff, but you don't get love for that brand. And She-Ra as a brand, but then again, She-Ra as a brand before all this was not the most amazing, strong super brand in the world. So it's not, it's not like they took this massively successful thing back in the 80s and they turned it into something that was, less successful. They took something that's kind of moderately successful and then they turned it into something that was once again kind of moderately successful. I said this, by the way, somewhere else, and they're like, but it got renewed for 5 seasons. I mean, it did. So that's why I say there was some success to it, but it's not like this launched a global franchise. It's not like this became toys everywhere and merchandise, which is not always the game. But it's a hit. It just wasn't a massive hit. Whatever. It's always weird when you're comparing these things. But regardless, we saw that with Thundercats. They tried to put that out, and there's this kind of trend as you see in comics of doing the same thing. It's like, hey, wouldn't this be ironic and kitschy if we did this? And it's I think it has diminishing returns. I think at some point, well, put it this way: you can make money every now and then if you put something out and then you're really sarcastic about it and you're a good storyteller, so that sarcasm becomes kind of charming. You can do that, and that can work, but you have to use it sparingly because generally people will go with what you tell them. So if you tell them, "Hey, come look at this steaming pile of crap, huh? You're gonna love this pile of crap. You're gonna. It's such a pile of crap. You're gonna love looking at it." And most people are like they'll be like, "Hey, if you hate it, then I'll hate it too." Like people will generally follow. And so if you go too far, too long, too much into the ultra sarcasm for brands area, it doesn't wind up well. We see the diminishing returns. Comic books in particular, I think, because you're trying to do this monthly thing. That's the other problem. The pace, the sarcasm wears off with the pace of the comic. If it comes out like once a month, you might get people for the first like, hey, look at this. I think this kind of happened with that Wonder Twins comic that came out. It was like there was some aspect of it like, yeah, this thing is sarcastic and it's kind of poking at these Wonder Twin characters who are super annoying, but we've made them contemporary and that's going to be great and everything else. And the first issue did okay, second issue less, and then it just diminished from there because at some point this kind of sarcasm joke played out over several months, you start to lose people pretty quickly, and I think that's what kind of happened there. So Powerpuff Girls, I mean, I don't, it's not good. They could retool it. It's not going to make it better. Again, I think it's going to die. It is if you get a chance and you have no idea what I'm talking about at this point because apparently you're getting copyright strikes post the script. Fine. You can easily look this up on Google or social media or whatever and get to these things. It is terrible. I mean, it's just on every level. People. It's one of those cases where it's like you should be ashamed for having done this. It's sometimes you can say like, hey, at least you tried. You put something out. It didn't work, but it's unique. You gave it a shot. But then there's other things you're like, no, you should be ashamed you did this. Right about the point you're typing the words like, let's leak Bubbles nudes to the internet. You're like, yeah, you've screwed up. Anyway, maybe you loved it. Let me know your thoughts below. Like and subscribe. Thanks for listening.